Welcome to Girls Gone Wellness, Jeffrey.
Thanks very much for having me. Should be a fun conversation.
Yes, I am so excited to get started. We have a lot to talk
Yes.
about, a lot of ground to cover, as you
Yeah.
know. So, before we get started, can you just tell us about yourself, your background, and then how you got into the plant-based nutrition space?
Yeah, so I'm a plant-based health advocate, a general well-being advocate. Yeah, someone who's really, really passionate about health and wellness, and I think it really stemmed from kind of my journey into plant-based nutrition. So prior to that, this was in 2017 that I went plant-based. Prior to that, I'd been very much involved in sports and training and things like that. But my knowledge of nutrition was probably no more than, oh, here's meat for protein and milk for calcium. And that was kind of it. That was basically it. So then when I came across the documentary, What the Health, which I always preface this by saying that I don't think people should make dietary changes based off of documentaries. But on this occasion, I did. And I decided to shift to a plant-based diet. But because I'm someone who trains and does strength training and things like that, I wanted it to be beneficial for that and lend well to that. So I was, did a real big deep dive, reading scientific papers, books, podcasts to kind of really just try and optimize the diet in that way. And then, yeah, I've got to this point where I've kind of feel like I'm in a good place. I feel like if somebody wants to educate people on how to get more plants into their diet, not necessarily going fully plant-based, but also
Mhm.
seeing how other strategies for health can really just improve your life, improve your well-being, and also to make these things accessible for people as well, because I don't think health should be complicated. So, yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell, really.
Yeah, I love that. We've been talking a lot about plant-based eating. I do want you to kind of give us a description. Like, what is plant-based vegan, or is plant-based like just adding more plants? What is your kind of definition of that?
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting question. So I actually think that I think there's some flex there. I think that if you say you're plant based, you that could be maybe you eat like 90% plant based and you maybe have some
Mhm.
lean meats or fish on the side, or you eat 100% plant based. Like I eat 100% plant based, so I'll just say plant based. But if someone
Yeah.
is plant predominant or wants to call themselves plant based, but they're not fully quote unquote vegan in terms of excluding wild animal products, I'm not going to get crazy about it. I
Yeah.
think in terms of plant-based versus vegan, I do think there's a definite kind of disparity in terms of that. Vegan essentially is just avoiding all animal products. So it tells me what you don't eat, but it doesn't tell me
Yeah.
what you do eat, essentially.
Mm.
Whereas if someone says
Mhm.
they eat a whole food plant-based diet, I've got an idea of the kind of foods that they're going to be eating day to day.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like so Jeanette and I were more, I would call myself like plant forward. I
Yeah,
have a
yeah,
huge emphasis on plants in my
yeah,
diet. I do eat meat and animal products, but
yeah,
it's just more emphasis on the
yeah,
plants.
yeah.
But I almost feel like we're like going against the grain in the wellness world right now.
Mm.
Like I feel like I'm like scared to say like, oh, I eat like mostly plants, which is so sad. Like, how did
Yeah.
we get here?
Yeah, it's crazy because I think, as you say, there's such an emphasis on carnivore and heavy meat consumption,
Yeah.
and people talking about, and I'm sure we're going to touch on the lectins and all of these
Oh,
things.
yeah.
I just think it's all just a bit, it's nonsense, really. And
Yes.
again, it complicates things for people who are just trying to get healthier, essentially. So
Yep,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Was there anything you noticed when you watched this documentary, you started making these changes? Anything you noticed in your health, like positive changes?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we say that I started making these changes. I went plant based overnight, and bearing in
Oh, I
mind,
love
I
it.
was someone who ate a lot of eggs, a lot of fish. I'm got of Ghanaian heritage, so a lot of the meals in my household were lots of chicken, lots of fish, lots of eggs. So overnight, I was like, boom, right, let me just change and just give this a try. After 2 weeks, my sleep was so much better. I was sleeping more deeply. There was a noticeable change in my sleep. I felt like I had more energy. I felt like I had more mental clarity as well, which was kind of weird, but I just felt like a bit clearer. And of course, these are
Mhm.
anecdotal to me, but certain people have mentioned that they had similar effects. And I think it's
Mhm.
interesting because I'm someone who's quite all or nothing. So for me, it was never a case of I've watched this documentary. Let me maybe get more plants into the diet.
Yeah.
However, I think that if someone watches that and they don't necessarily have to be plant based to be healthy. And this is something that I really do emphasize. I'll say fully plant based rather to be healthy. This is something that I really do emphasize because you have people within the plant based slash vegan space who maybe might point to this is the number one diet, this is the best diet. But I just don't necessarily agree with that because I think
Yeah.
we have to approach things at a very individual level. How can we say that someone who's 90% plant based or plant forward is healthier or unhealthier than someone who's 100% plant based? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So yeah, I think we have to look at it from an individual standpoint. And I think as long as people are getting more plants onto their plate and getting more fiber, as we'll discuss, I think that's always going to be a win.
Yeah, I would say Vic is definitely plant-based. I've seen her eat a whole tray of vegetables in one sitting.
Okay,
So
don't
I
call me
will call
out like that.
plant-based. She loves her
I
broccoli.
do.
Um,
Not the best. Love it.
it's so good. You speak a lot about optimizing health through diet. So, in your opinion, what does optimal mean to you personally, and like how has this
No,
changed over
that's a
time?
really interesting one because I've quite recently. So my wife just gave birth to our first child, so I'm in dad mode now. So actually, a lot of things aren't really optimal, but I'm actually okay with that. So I think, but in a normal circumstance, I think optimal or being close to like being to you towards your best. I think it looks like, majority of your meals being whole food. I don't think you need to be absolutely perfect or strive for perfection. I tend to eat maybe 85 to 90% of my meals whole foods, and then I might have a bit of ice cream here or there. Like it's cool. It's not a big deal. Then you want to be looking towards your sleep. I think 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night is great. I mean, obviously, as a new dad, I'm not getting that right now, but I'm okay with that. And of course, your training regime. I mean, my training regime is a bit sporadic at the moment, but I think we know the importance of resistance training. That's just well documented in the literature. 3 to 4 times a week if you can, and then maybe some cardio in there as well. And then one thing that I think is quite underrated and maybe not spoken about, and particularly, you have these people who like the biohackers, the Brian Johnsons of this world who try and optimize every single metric. But I never hear him talking about community and how important actually being in community is for your health and
Yeah.
well-being. Like, that feeling when you're around friends and you're laughing and you're talking about things and you're going deep, and then you leave that and you kind of just reflect on how good that is. Like that is such an important aspect for health that I don't think gets spoken about enough. So I think those 4 pillars, if you're in a position to be able to like lean into them as best as you can and try and steer towards like an optimal place, is great. But of course, life happens, whether it's kids, whether it's jobs, whether it's things like that. But in those circumstances, I think it's always good to have like a minimum viable dose. Like I haven't completely stopped my training, or I haven't completely tried to optimize my diet and things like that. I'm trying to do it in a way which is conducive to the situation. So it's all about balance in those circumstances.
It's definitely, I love the word balance. And I love that you said it like that, because I think sometimes in our field and like the Brian Johnsons of the world, health optimization is not your full time job.
No.
And for a lot
Yeah.
of us, we feel like it has to be. And
Yeah.
it starts to take over all aspects of our life. And you're
Absolutely.
a dad and you're a husband. You can't have a full time job just optimizing your health.
Yeah.
And I think that it's so important to say that, because so many of us listen to these health podcasts and we do think like we're not doing enough and we need to be doing better.
Yeah.
But there is that balance. You're a new dad. You're not going to, you're going to have ice cream, and that's okay.
Exactly.
You're not going to
Have
sleep
it, and
every
that's
night.
fine. And there might be nights where I have 4 hours sleep, and that's
Yep.
okay. Obviously, long term, it's not great, but we can figure things out. Like my wife and I, we were speaking about changing our shifts, so maybe I'll do like 2 nights of the night shift, and then maybe she'll do 2 nights, so we can both get like a couple of nights of really solid sleep, just to kind of balance things out. So yeah, and as you say, like so many people listen to these podcasts and they feel like they have to do so much to be healthy. And I often think that, like, I always believe in giving health information for the many and not the few. So like all the people who are interested in like the Brian Johnsons and the sleep tracking and the Oura-ring, like it's quite a small minority of us. And that stuff, it's interesting. I like it. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
But what about the average person on the street who's just trying to get a bit healthier, who just wants to know where to start? They're going to look at these things and see that people are spending £600 on a red light machine and £1,000 on the Oura-ring, and they think, wow, is that what I have to do to be healthy? I can't afford that, so I'm just not going to do anything. But it's not that. It's literally making one change to one meal a week, or maybe one night where you decide to, you know what, I'm going to go to bed at 10 o'clock and see what happens. And then you slowly start to snowball from there. And that's real health, and that's practical, accessible health, which is way more important than thinking about all the biohacks and all of these types of things, which is very popular on social media right now, but I don't think is very accessible for the average person.
And we've somehow convinced each other that you need the Oura-ring, but you don't need the vegetables.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
We missed the foundation.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's not exciting to talk about vegetables.
No,
it's not
it's
exciting
not.
to talk about lentils or tofu. Like, it's just.
I think it is.
What you do know is that the most boring things, the standard things, is what works. It's what stood the test of time. We might not be talking about the Oura-ring in 10, 15 years, but vegetables will still be there. They'll still be there. They'll still be ready to go. So, I think it's the social media era of wellness, which is kind of distorting things a little bit.
Yeah, I always tell my patients, if you see something shocking that you've never heard before on social media, it's probably not true.
100%. 100%.
Right.
Simple as that. Exactly.
Okay, so plant-based eating has gained huge momentum. Even obviously, right now we're kind of in this carnivore world, but
Yeah.
in general, I do
Yeah.
feel like it has gained huge momentum. There's also a fair share of myths that are
Hmm.
circulating the internet, especially right now. What are, before we get into the ones we're going to ask you about,
Yeah. Yeah.
what are the biggest misconceptions that you hear when it comes
Yeah.
to eating plant-based?
So I think when I first started eating plant-based, the biggest one at that time was protein. You can't get enough protein, this, that, and the other. And it's actually interesting because I remember around 3 or 4 years before I went plant-based, I knew someone who would move towards a whole food plant-based diet. And my immediate reaction, like a very visceral reaction, was to be like, how are you going to do that? I could never do that. Where would I get my protein? I need my meat, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then you realize, okay, you go plant based, there's plenty of proteins. And now the thing that a lot of people talk about is bioavailability. Now, there is some credence to that, but I think the studies that do look at bioavailability look at raw legumes fed to pigs, right? So that's not like, it's not, they look at this, the DIASS and the PD-CAS score, I believe it is, to look at like protein digestibility.
Hmm.
But I think if you look at, there are so many studies now where they compare an omnivorous diet to a plant-based diet, and as long as the protein totals and amino acid totals are matched, you're
Yeah.
going to see gains in strength, muscle, all these different things. It's not a problem. So I think that is the one that's now started to persist. It's less about, oh, where'd you get your protein, but it's now more about bioavailability and blah 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 blah. And it sounds very like, oh, there's something there, but again, when you look deeper under the surface, it's not really that much of a problem. And then I guess on the flip side, it's where one of the myths is that people say that the plant-based diet is the best diet for health. And again, it's like it's more about looking at a specific theme. And I think what we can do with many different diets is like adopt a theme. So you can look at like lowering your saturated fat, increasing your fiber, increasing your plant protein, obviously reducing processed foods, and those that kind of dietary like kind of umbrella or framework can be done in a number of different ways. So there's not really a specific diet per se, but it's more looking at what are the kind of characteristics of a diet that I want to get into my daily life. So I'd probably say those are the two that persist at the moment, and have been spoken about a lot.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We'll get into all of that a little bit more into the episode. But me and Vic actually just graduated from naturopathic medical school. And in our program, we talked a lot about the Mediterranean
Yes.
diet and how olive oil
Mm.
is a great part of the
Yeah.
Mediterranean diet and is definitely a
Yeah.
healthy food with lots of
Hmm.
benefits. But there also is another trend, I guess I will say, circulating on the internet when it comes to seed
Hmm.
oils. And like, it's definitely something that, I mean, Vic knows how I feel about this topic.
Yeah.
It's just, it's insane to me that, like, and we were talking about this before, me and Vic, but anyone could go onto PubMed, do some searches, and you can see the research
Hmm.
right there. It's fascinating to me that people can take this and go the complete
Yeah.
opposite
Yeah.
way. But I mean, people on the internet are saying that seed oils are
Yeah.
inflammatory, toxic, all of these
Yeah.
things. Can you just touch on this topic, please?
I'll be honest with you. I actually kind of like I stay away largely from the seed oil thing because
Yeah,
it's, as you
smart.
say, it's one of those things where it's like people are so wedded now to the idea that certain oils are bad. And look, I think if we look at like, there's a difference between a cold pressed rapeseed oil, for example, and an oil that's maybe used in McDonald's that's been repeatedly heated where it's starting to oxidize. And that's
Right.
what
Mhm.
people, it's like when people say carbohydrates are bad, they're not talking about the broccoli, the berries, and the other foods that contain carbohydrates, which are super health promoting. They're talking about the white breads, the white pastas, the refined carbs, but then they do the
Right.
umbrella of carbs. So I almost think that that's what's happening as well with seed oils. When
Mhm.
people think of seed oils, they think of the ones that you go to McDonald's and you see the ones that the fries are being dunked in and it's just being heated for like 24 hours. Yeah, sure, they're going to oxidize and become unstable. But what if you add a small amount of like cold pressed seed oil into your salad or something like that? I just don't see how, with all of these other elements of health, if you're dialing them in and trying to be as consistent as you possibly can be, that they're just going to be like this huge boogeyman that people talk about. So yeah, and I think people love
Mhm.
to, utilize certain stories about them. And look, I don't think they're a necessity to have in anyone's diet. If someone wants to avoid them, then cool. I don't actually personally consume them because I prefer olive oil and avocado oil.
Yeah.
The taste for avocado
Mhm.
oil and the polyphenols, and then for the high heat cooking of avocado oil. Those are my two preferences. But let's
Mhm.
just say the last oil on the shelf was, I don't know, a cold pressed rapeseed oil, and I needed to cook something that night. I'm probably going to buy it. I'm
Yeah.
going to be okay. I'm not going to die. you know. But that's the
Yeah.
way that I see it. And yeah, I think social media, again, people have created nice stories, they edit nice videos, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not so sure about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely smart to stay away from that on the internet because you'll get a lot of commenters on your
It's a big one.
videos.
People really just like, and I think again, the studies that we have seen where they improve markers of cardiometabolic health and things like that. I don't know why people avoid those studies, but then look at the other ones that maybe try to support their view. And those other studies might be kind of, whether it's a case study or some kind of cross-sectional study or something that's lower on the evidence hierarchy, essentially. So it's a strange one, but I don't know.
And I mean, we talked about accessibility too. Like, I don't know how it is in the UK, but in Canada, like sometimes olive oil can get pretty expensive
Oh,
and
it's,
vegetable oils are like a
yeah,
cheaper option,
yeah,
right? So it comes back to
yeah,
that. I mean, if people all they can afford is vegetable oil, then
yeah.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
what they can
that's
afford,
another
right? But
facet of health that maybe people don't understand is, or people don't appreciate as much, is the socioeconomic side of things. People might actually
Mhm.
want to buy the healthier food, they want to have the healthier options, but they're just not in a position financially, or maybe they're in a food desert, or things obviously where certain foods are subsidized and healthy foods aren't. Like
Yeah.
that is a big factor for a lot of people who maybe want to be healthier and who maybe just aren't in a situation to make those changes. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a big part of it. Right now in the US, I'm just so glad none of us are from the US. So we can have this conversation. RFK had made a statement somewhat recently about how back in the day, these fast food chains used to cook with beef tallow.
Oh, here we go.
And he said, well, there was no obesity back then, so
Yeah,
it must be because of that. And
yeah,
now restaurants are switching to using beef tallow again, which of course is concerning.
yeah,
And we know that saturated, this is where it drives me crazy because we know that saturated fats are not good for you.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And so now we're making this switch
Mm,
to beef tallow, especially. That's a big one. I don't know
mm,
why.
mm,
But yeah, that's something that is just like right now is absolutely driving me nuts because I
yeah,
think that the reality is if people avoid seed oils and they're like, look how much healthier I am. But it's
mm,
probably because you stopped getting like the McDonald's deep fried
exactly.
fries,
Yeah,
right? Which like beef tallow or seed oils are not good for you,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And
So,
I think obviously with the saturated fat thing, I think it's important to differentiate. Look, for example, saturated fat in dairy has been shown to be fairly neutral,
right.
things like that. But of course, fatty cuts of meat, that's where we're seeing those ApoB containing lipoproteins start to,
Yeah.
drive that plaque into the arteries. And that's proven to be a problem. It's there.
Yeah.
So I'm not too sure why. I just think it's a really interesting one because I personally think that, like, when you think about this whole "Make America Healthy Again" thing, there are so many other factors, so many other things that are so more important than the oil that fries are cooked in.
Yeah.
I don't see.
Yeah.
I just feel like there's a saying where it's like, stepping over dollars to pick up pennies, right? It's
Yeah.
almost like
Yeah.
you're leading people to believe that they're part of something. Oh, well, look what we've swapped out. I saw something else where I think it was titanium dioxide or some other compound has been swapped out of Skittles. And I'm like, still Skittles.
It's
It
still
doesn't
Skittles.
change anything. Like
Right, right.
when we're seeing that so many people are living unbelievably sedentary lives, people are eating, copious amounts of processed foods. They don't have
Yeah.
access to the foods which are going to lend itself well to
Yeah.
good health. They're unbelievably stressed, multiple jobs,
Mhm.
or their financial situation. These are like the big pillars in terms of the drivers of poor health, not the oil that the
Mhm.
fries are cooked in. I just don't see like
No.
I don't see it. And people might go, oh yeah, well, he's got to start somewhere. And I'm like, okay, we'll see in 5 years if he's just still trying to do these little things. I saw, and again, from the shop standpoints who were doing these things, it's a very good marketing ploy. There was one where RFK, I think he was sitting in the store where they just switched out to tallow, and I'm like, it's a perfect marketing opportunity for them.
Yeah.
If they truly really cared about the oils or they knew anything about them, why didn't they swap the stuff years ago? Why didn't they swap the
Yeah.
tallow years ago? But they're jumping on a
Yeah.
bandwagon, jumping on a trend, and I'm sure in
Yeah.
that first week of swapping to tallow and RFK being in that store, they would have probably got loads of people going through the doors. And
For
from a
sure.
marketing standpoint, a financial standpoint, amazing for them. But do they
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
care about the health of the consumer? Because if they did, if the fast food chain really cared about the health of the consumer, they would they would either shut their doors and completely switch to a health food store. Really care about the health, you know
Exactly.
what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. I just think it's all just stepping over
Mhm.
dollars to pick up pennies, as they say.
Yeah, it's so
For
true. And it
sure.
goes with anything. I mean, my dad, I'm going to call him out, but he went keto at one
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
He
yeah,
fell into that train and he would
yeah.
buy like keto chocolate, like keto
Mm,
O. Henry
mm,
bars. And it was
mm.
like, it's still an O. Henry bar.
Yeah, exactly,
Just eat
exactly.
whatever one tastes better to
Yeah,
you
yeah,
and
yeah,
then move on and like
yeah.
go eat some vegetables,
Yeah,
please.
exactly.
You know?
It's marketing. I think marketing is very powerful now. I posted something on Instagram the other day about, there's a lot of, I don't know if it's the same in the US, but high protein is now like the thing that a lot of companies are slapping
Hmm.
on the front of their
Yeah.
product,
Yes.
even if it's like, I don't know, a Reese's bar or some kind of Hershey's or something that's just unhealthy. They'll put
Yeah.
like some, I don't know, protein soya crispies in there, and they'll put high protein on the front, all the same product with all the emulsifiers, with all the sugar, with all the, the high
Yeah.
fat. But you think like people see it and they're like, oh, this is high protein. This is going to help with my protein goals. And I'm just like, come on, come
I
on.
know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I don't know when people are going to realize like the chocolatey protein bars, they
Mm.
don't actually fill you up. Like,
No, they
congrats, you
don't.
got 18 grams of protein in
Yeah,
your chocolate bar.
yeah,
That
yeah,
tasted like chalk,
yeah.
but it also makes you feel like your gut like hurts after.
Well,
Like, it's
exactly,
not.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, I use protein bars every now and again, but the ones I use are just whole foods. And
Yeah.
again, I'll have it with
Hmm.
like an apple or some dates or something like that. But a lot of
Yeah.
these are just chocolate bars with just a
Yeah.
bit of protein added to
Yes.
them. It's important to see
Exactly.
the difference.
Definitely.
Hmm.
Okay, we got to talk about lectins and
Yes.
oxalates. Those are
Yeah.
the two. I got caught years ago in
Mm.
reading that book by, oh gosh,
Stephen Gundry.
Stephen
Yeah,
Gundry.
yeah, yeah,
Andre.
yeah,
And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to change everything. I'm going to die. This was before I went to school.
yeah.
Um, but we got to talk about it because for some reason it's actually still being talked about. This is
Yeah,
like still getting quoted online.
yeah.
So let's start with the lectins deal. What the heck is that? And why do you think that they've gotten such a bad rap in the wellness space?
Well, again, I think it's in the wellness space. People like to focus on mechanisms and in these certain pathways as opposed to overall health outcomes. We see these lectins,
Hmm.
these compounds called anti-nutrients. They can potentially prevent absorption of minerals in the gut.
Hmm.
So you get them in like lentils, beans, oatmeal, things like that. But the problem that I have with like people saying that, oh, lectins are bad and this is bad, is that it doesn't look at the overall picture, as I mentioned. Look at the health outcomes of these people who eat more of these foods. And interestingly enough, I saw so you had Shyla on your podcast, didn't you?
Yeah,
Yeah, so she's
Yeah.
love
great
her.
as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah.
And she posted something on, I think it was on her story today, and it was looking at the relative consumption of pulses, so like chickpeas, lentils, in comparison to meat, dairy, and it was tiny. So the funniest thing that I see is that you're blaming lectins and all of these compounds in these foods that no one's really eating as the cause of disease. Do you know what I mean? People are
Yeah,
barely eating enough lentils, enough chickpeas, enough oats. These aren't foods that people are
Yeah.
consuming. So how can they be the cause of
Right.
so many problems?
yeah,
And then the funny thing is that you actually look at like phytic acid, for example. That's another big one that Dave Asprey
yeah,
talks about.
Hmm.
But actually, phytic acid is an antioxidant, so it can have potential benefits as well. But again, conveniently, these people forget about the other side of the coin. And again, as you mentioned, with people seeing something shocking on social media, a boogeyman, it's emotionally very like attractive for people, and
yeah,
that's how people
Hmm.
get onto the train. And Gundry's a great storyteller, and people get lured in by that. So again, I really just want people just to understand that these people, the Gundrys, the Aspreys, they don't really have your health, your best interests at heart. They're just
no,
trying to make a buck, and they'll make a boogeyman out of anything because I'm yet to see
Hmm.
anyone who's got sick from eating lentils or chickpeas
yeah,
or oats. I really haven't seen it. And
true.
if they're out there, I'd like to see it, but I know that it's
Yeah.
not out there. So yeah.
Absolutely. I want to switch to talking about the carnivore diet because I think it's similar to the whole seed oil
Mm,
thing where people are really promoting this as a healthy
yeah.
diet when, again, like the research is so clear about the harms of saturated fat. Like we know that what the research says
Mm,
about
yeah.
saturated fat. So, I mean, when it comes to like plant-based diets and things like that, what are some of like the common misconceptions about the plant-based diet that the carnivore trend perpetuates?
So they talk about like again fiber not being essential and things like that, and touching
Yeah,
on the
Right.
lectins and all
That's a
the
new one.
all the phytonutrients and how you don't need plant foods. And look, some people might have issues with plant foods, but is that down to the foods or is that down to their own? Maybe their gut
yeah,
can't process them. So it may be a case where you eliminate them. And what we're seeing with the carnivore diet and people eliminating these foods, they're seeing some results, but it's like any elimination diet. You'll see benefit, but then actually the thing that you want to do is kind of reintroduce these foods. I don't know if you've seen, there's a page on Instagram called Carnivore Cringe, where someone who basically
Gotta
it's a
follow.
great page, but because what it does is that they basically they just like post screenshots of people who have either like sent in messages or on like forum boards and things like that, talking about how they're really struggling on the carnivore diet, or whether they've had some kind of heart issue or things like that. Because everyone who's on the carnivore diet talks about it as how it's such a great diet, but they don't realize what they're leading people towards, because the vast majority of these people will end up with really serious health issues,
Yeah.
lack of fiber and overconsumption of saturated fat, there's lack of diversity in the diet, which is not going to benefit your gut. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I personally can't see why anyone would want to do that. If you want to have, I'm not saying that meat is bad, because it's absolutely not. You know, there's absolutely space in a healthy diet for animal products, but to go full animal products and not have any fiber, any like, you know, carbohydrates into your diet, I'm just not so sure about that.
No, we act in these like extremes
Yeah, because
in
it's
the
what
wellness
sells on
space.
social media. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a guest on and she made a really good point too. She said, especially for women,
Mm.
we have always been in this like, don't eat a lot of fat, eat low
Mm.
calorie, like get
Hmm.
smaller. The smaller
Yeah.
your body, the better. That was how, like, especially the previous generation really kind of grew up.
Yeah.
And so the freedom that I think women might feel in the initial stages of going carnivore, when all of a sudden they're eating all this fat,
Yes.
I think is a reason why people are like, oh, I feel so great
Yeah.
those first
Yeah.
3 weeks.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And then as soon as you can't sustain it because
Yeah.
it's not sustainable and your
Mhm.
body's like, "Oh my gosh, we're getting back to our regular way of eating." You
Yeah.
can't stop,
Hmm.
right? And you
Hmm.
gain the weight back that you lost and
Yeah.
more weight from your
Exactly.
3-week
Yeah.
diet.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's just I don't know. I don't know if it's the shock factor. I don't know what it is, but
Yeah.
people are really hanging on to this carnivore thing.
Mm. But we'll see. You know, we'll see where it is in the next sort of 3 to 5 years. I reckon if you look at someone like Paul Saladino, for example, he was a very, very, you know, staunch proponent of the carnivore diet. He wrote a book about it,
Yeah.
which was a bestseller. And then he slowly started to. He came out on a podcast and talked about how he had all these issues, heart
Yeah.
palpitations, low electrolytes,
Oh.
his testosterone was dropping, and that's why he started. Yeah, he still focuses on quote unquote animal based, but he eats a
Yeah.
lot of rice, honey, fruit, squash, things like that. So he's clearly not carnivore, but I mean, his book's probably still selling, and there are probably people who still hang their hat on it, even though he's come out and said that, nah, this didn't work for me.
There was a viral post that was circulating probably a month ago. Someone that was on the carnivore diet and they had like the fat
Oh yes, I
deposits on
saw
their
that. Yeah,
hand. Yeah, that was like
yeah,
insane.
yeah.
Like,
There we go. And I think, yeah,
yeah,
it's just like, why would you want to risk
yeah,
that? Why would you want to do that? And you know,
yeah.
and again, loads of people do it, and then they start up a social media page and talk about how it's the best way of eating because the algorithms seem to promote it. I don't really know why. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I'll be very intrigued to see where this trend is at in sort of
Yeah.
3 to 5 years and whether people are still on it.
For sure. Me
Yeah.
too. I want to talk about tofu
Yes.
because I mean, this is a huge, I guess, food group
Yeah,
that or
soy
food.
foods if we're talking about
Soy.
tofu,
Yeah.
umami. Yeah,
I guess, yeah, soy
yeah.
foods that are big in the plant-based
Mhm.
community. I know I eat a lot of
Mhm.
tofu and I really enjoy it
Yeah.
myself. But a big myth that circulates whenever you talk about soy-based products is it's detrimental to your
Yeah.
hormones, especially, I guess, for women or for men as well. I would love for you to talk about this one because I think this is one that still kind of circulates
Yeah,
online.
I probably should have mentioned that as one of the myths. Actually, that one still is perpetuated. And look, I think the evidence is there. I think there was an updated meta-analysis in 2022 or 2023 showed that soy foods have no impact on male sex hormones. I get my blood tested once a year. My testosterone is always in a really high range, which is good for me. Like, there's no problems there. Yeah, I mean, it keeps on being spoken about. I think there was one case study where a guy, I think he ate like 12 servings of soy per day,
Yeah.
and I think he developed mild gynecomastia, so very mild, like swelling of his breast tissue. And then once he stopped, it went away. That's not reflective of a normal amount of soy that you would eat in a day. Like, you just eat a normal amount. I try to go organic. I don't think you necessarily maybe have to, but I prefer to go organic with the tofu, tempeh, edamame. And yeah, I think it's a great food. Like, it's a great source of protein. Like, tempeh being fermented, you get the probiotics there, and you get slightly easier protein digestibility. So yeah, and they're great. Like, they take on whatever flavor you want. Like, for me, they're a staple in my cooking. It's someone who wants to get good amounts of protein in my diet every day. So, yeah, and I think from the female side of things as well, people talk about it because it's got phytoestrogens and they say that it increases estrogen. But again, this is just not what happens. Phytoestrogens are completely different, and they actually latch onto estrogen receptors and block estrogenic activity, which is, again, you tell this to people and it's almost like they've believed in this thing for so long that they can't comprehend that what they're saying is just the complete opposite of the reality. So yeah, and I always say, look, if a food is not working for you, or you don't personally like it, or you have some kind of allergic reaction to it, then don't eat it. It's fine. You're not obliged to eat tofu. But I think it's when people make blanket statements about these foods that aren't based in reality, that's when I feel like I have to like address it or say certain things and just kind of correct them.
For sure. I mean, I will say your videos on Instagram with your recipes look delicious.
Yeah.
Me and Vic were talking before that they look so good, and I have to know how you cook your tofu to make it like crispy like that, because I can never figure out the way to do it. So I have
You
to
know
know.
what's funny? Actually, my wife sometimes makes it for me, and she started to make it even better than me. And I'm like, what are you doing here? How are you doing this? So the way that I typically do it to get it really crispy, I'll add like a marinade. So I'll maybe put some olive oil on there, a bit of salt, maybe some blackened. I've got like a spice blend, which is blackened Cajun, which is really nice. Maybe add a bit of coconut aminos, or you can use soy sauce, but I prefer coconut aminos because it's slightly lower in sodium. And then any other spices, maybe some dried herbs on there, mix that through. And then what I'll do is I'll add corn flour. So corn flour is the key ingredient that will help to crisp it up a little bit. And then you can either put it in the air fryer, or you can pan fry it, or you can put it in the oven. And then you should get a nice crisp on the outside. And it's owing to the corn flour. So make sure you have that as part of the marinade.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, that's good to know. I was telling Jeanette before we jumped on today that I actually tried tofu for the first time 2 days ago.
Oh, wow.
First time ever.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was delicious. I'm like, how have I been missing out on this?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And it's like, I'm not telling people, right, you need to cut out meat and get all of your plant protein, just go fully plant protein. But like, it's a nice thing to swap out because as I said, it absorbs flavor. It's very versatile. You can put it in anything. I can put it in like bowls or sandwiches or whatever it may be. It's just a really good source, an easy source of protein, and it's quite cheap as well. So
yeah,
it is.
Definitely. Yeah. I know that soy has its myths in so many different health spaces. So I work in the thyroid space.
Yes.
And there is this big idea that like soy will block thyroid hormone production. And similar to what you were saying with just like, you got to look at the quality of these studies and also how they did the study, right? And so the one study that was done in like the late 1900s was they gave children like exclusively soy-based formula and then tracked and saw that there was maybe a mild decrease in TSH that wasn't even clinically significant.
Right.
So it wouldn't even cause symptoms for people. And yet that community, the thyroid community, is like really, really strict on going no soy.
It's just about the nuance, as you say. Like when in that circumstance, you're feeding exclusively soy to kids, and then it's a mild drop. But no one eats like that. No, this is the thing where it's like we look at that's like a mechanism where it's like you just give exclusively one food. We eat a variety of different foods in a varied, balanced, healthy diet. Soy is absolutely fine.
Yeah. Definitely. Okay, so speaking of variety in the diet, we got to talk about the complete, incomplete sources of protein. And because there is that myth that it's like, well, plants aren't a complete source, so I can't, like, I won't be able to achieve my protein goals and like my strength goals and all of that with just plants. So I would love for you to address that statement once and for all.
So I actually think that because when you say complete versus incomplete, people might think that plant foods are like missing. Obviously, let's go back to the basics. So obviously, you have to get your essential amino acids through food, 9 of them. And what people are made to believe is almost that plant food being incomplete kind of indicates that it's like missing an amino acid, which is obviously impossible. But the thing is that plant foods have all the 9 essential amino acids. This has been proven time and time again. However, they just have them in slightly lower amounts in some cases. So I believe like legumes are maybe slightly lower in, is it lysine or methionine? And then rice, for example, is lower in the other. I'm not entirely sure which one it is, but so you might have slightly lower amounts. So the idea from a plant protein standpoint, not even just in the day, people say, oh, you got to combine rice and beans. You don't have to combine every single meal. Across the week, if you're eating a variety of protein sources, that's where you're going to be good. So personally, for me, I'll have oatmeal in the mornings. I'll put a scoop of protein powder, which is pea brown rice, pumpkin seed protein. I'll add some hemp seeds, even oats have some protein in them. So that's
Yep.
that. And then at lunchtime, I might have like a power bowl with tofu or tempeh, maybe some black beans on there. And then in the evenings, I might have like a chickpea curry or something like that with maybe some added tempeh or whatever it may be. So I'm getting a variety of different protein sources across the day. It's only ever a problem if you're eating one sole source of food. So if I'm eating just black beans for my protein, then I'm going to be slightly lower in lysine. But that's just, again, it's just not how you eat. And again, it comes down to looking at how are you doing things practically in the real world. You're eating a variety of foods. You don't have to combine every single meal. And it's something to think about. And I always advise people, look, if you're going to go plant-based, you want to get more plant protein, diversify your sources: tofu, tempeh, lentils, beans, chickpeas, legume pastas, which are amazing, seitan, which is a really like lean source of plant protein. So yeah, and if you do that, you'll be absolutely fine.
Okay, let's do like kind of a walkthrough. So a thing I like to do with patients is talking about building a plate, right?
Yes.
We got to get our protein in, we got to get our fats in, we got to get our fiber in. Walk us through building a plate when we have this kind of plant-based diet.
Yeah. So I like to build what I call power bowls or power plates, whatever it may be. So one, it helps to take the kind of stress out of maybe thinking that someone has to create a recipe. And two, it kind of covers like 6 areas that I think are really important when it comes to building a plant-based plate. So firstly, you want to think about your plant protein. So tofu, tempeh, as I just mentioned, beans, lentils. I prefer, in that case where I'm trying to get higher protein content, I'll prefer tofu or tempeh because they're just slightly higher. Tofu is like 18 grams of protein per 100 grams. Tempeh is like 21 grams of protein per 100 grams. Seitan is even higher, which is great. Then beyond that, I'll look towards a complex carbohydrate. So that could be something like a whole grain or ancient grains, or even a root vegetable like sweet potato. So I love quinoa. I love foods like buckwheat, bulgur wheat, things like that. And that will get you a really good complex carbohydrate, really good source of fiber in there and different minerals and antioxidants. Then I'll think about healthy fats. They're really important. So avocado, hummus, tahini. We know how important healthy, fats are for hormone development, for the brain, things like that. So that's really important. Green vegetables, I think, are amazing. So whether that's cruciferous vegetables in the form of broccoli or green vegetables, whether it's kale, spinach, Swiss chard, things like that. And then fermented foods. I really like people to get more fermented foods into their diet. So foods like sauerkraut, foods like kimchi, even tempeh is obviously fermented as well. So that's great. And then you can maybe even sneak in mushrooms. That's like an optional 6th kind of facet to that plate that you can get in there. So yeah, if you're covering all of those bases, you're really going to put yourself in a good place in terms of you're going to be getting good amounts of protein, really high fiber as well. Plenty of micronutrients, really good source of healthy fats. And if you do that, and there's so much variety with them as well. You can change your protein source. You can add different greens, whole different range of different whole grains that you can use. So yeah, if I'm looking to build a plate or getting people to think about how they should kind of construct their plate, that's what I'll be looking at.
Oh my gosh, I'm so hungry now. I'm inspired to make a great lunch now. I want to talk about fiber. I think right now all of the hype is around protein. I mean, we talked about the protein popcorn. Now there's protein cookies, there's protein everything. But fiber is obviously so important. It is such a big part of a plant-based diet. So just for people that are maybe wondering or don't know much about fiber, why is it such an important part for like gut health, metabolic health, all that?
So people often say that, because we don't necessarily digest fiber ourselves. It's fermented in the gut, and then obviously our gut bacteria feed on it. But the reality is that the benefits of fiber come because we can't digest it. So we get benefits for reduced inflammation, increased gut bacteria, and we're nourishing the gut bacteria that are already there as well. You've got reduced risk of numerous different gastrointestinal diseases, colon cancer. Like, it is so important. And so one of the things that I love about fiber is the fact that obviously when you eat it, you feed the gut bacteria. They then dispense like chemicals like butyrate, short chain fatty acids that then have really positive benefits in terms of reducing risk of like type 2 diabetes, obesity, things like that. So it's super important. And I think so in the UK, I think the average that people are getting at the moment is around sort of 18 grams a day, which is much lower than the 30 grams minimum, which people should really be aiming for. But it's actually really easy to get. People always think that, you have to go for the beans and the lentils, and obviously they're great sources of fiber. But for someone who maybe hasn't been incorporating much of those foods into their diet, if they try to eat too much of them, they might have some gastrointestinal discomfort. So foods like chia seeds and flax seeds, 5 grams in a tablespoon of chia seeds, 3 grams of fiber in a tablespoon of flax seeds. You've got 9 grams in 1 cup of raspberries, which I just think is amazing. Like, people just don't really understand how amazing that is. 9 grams of fiber there. Then you've got oats. You've got like 4 or 5 grams of fiber in a cup. Again, fiber. You've got fiber in tempeh, which is fermented as well, which is great. So yeah, I think it's so important to try and get more fiber into your diet. And again, not necessarily thinking about having to go fully plant-based, because you don't. But just trying to get as much fiber in as you can, that you can tolerate, of course, and just reaping the benefits from that. I think there was a study in 2023, I think it was, that looked at every 10-gram daily increase in fiber was, I think it induced, was it a 10% reduced risk of all-cause mortality or something like that?
Something like that,
yeah. So beneficial.
Yeah, I saw this video online the other day where it was like, Americans don't have a protein deficiency. They actually have like a fiber deficiency problem. And I think that's so true. We just don't eat enough vegetables.
But the funny thing is, as you mentioned, we've touched on before in the call, where people often go to the extreme. So I then saw a nutritionist the other day saying like fiber is the new protein. And I was kind of like, no, it's not. Obviously, we know that there is an association with protein. But if you make statements like that, then people are going to swing to the opposite.
Go the other way.
Exactly. But they're both so important.
Yeah,
I think it's just you don't necessarily have to say that to encourage people to get more fiber in their diet. Maybe you have that's the shock value that people are looking for.
Yeah.
But you don't need to do that. You can just talk about the importance of fiber. I like to share some recipes that are high fiber, and that will kind of introduce it in a positive way for people without kind of adopting a hyperbolic standpoint.
Yeah.
100%. Do you find that it's pretty easy to travel or go out to restaurants or other social functions and keep it plant-based? Do you find that there's more options now when you go out?
Yeah, I'd say over the last sort of 5 years, there have been more options. But I think I was actually having a chat with my wife about this yesterday. When we leave the house, my expectations, they just come down. Because I know that when I'm in my house, I'm in full control of how I want to eat. Like, I can decide exactly what I want to do, get the amounts of protein in, and it's fantastic. But when I go out, and I think unless I'm going to a fully vegan restaurant or a fully plant-based restaurant, the options that people may have at other restaurants might just be like, oh, we're just going to tick the box and have that as to fill the quota, just to make sure that we have something that's plant-based on the menu for people.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm all right with that. Like, it just means that it means I don't have much decision fatigue when I'm out, trying to choose. So yeah, that's fine. I think traveling is a tricky one. So I try to travel to Ghana quite a lot, for example. And it's a lot harder to get like the tofus and things like that. So sometimes I'll just take some with me. But also, if I can't eat the way that I want when I'm in Ghana, it's all right. Like, I can have plantain and beans and rice and beans most days, which is fine. I'll maybe take when I travel, I mostly take oatmeal sachets and things like that, just to have some form of control. But I don't try and get too hung up about it. I always feel quite relaxed, and just knowing that, look, this is a period of time. When I get back, then I can get back into control of things. So yeah, that's kind of how things are shaped up travel wise.
You can learn a lot about someone by looking at what they put in their luggage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, mine. I'll have my supplements. I'll have some training gear, because I like to train when I'm on holiday. I don't still go I don't go full throttle, but I still like to get some training sessions in. Some foods in there. Yeah, you can definitely tell a lot by what someone's packing, for sure.
I remember recently going to the airport, and some poor guy had his bag checked, and they opened it up, and it was like several bottles of Restoralax.
What's that?
The laxative. It's a
No.
laxative. Oh no, poor guy.
Oh damn, poor guy.
Okay, so I want to talk about supplements. There is a lot of people who say if you're gonna go especially vegan, but I think that they're probably thinking more from the perspective of a lot of processed foods and that sort of thing. But they think you need to make sure you're on a multivitamin and all of these different supplements. Is there anything that you supplement with, or you recommend supplementing with, to kind of fill in gaps, or do you feel like you are really hitting all of those targets?
Yeah, I think you want to fill in gaps anyway, even if you think you're kind of where you need to be. So for me, I'll take a vegan multi-nutrient, which will have iron, calcium. So the ones that I think you need to supplement is B12. That's a non-negotiable. You need to supplement B12, or you can do fortified foods, but supplementing is just a bit easier.
Yeah.
Vitamin
Mhm.
D3, K2, I think, again, as someone who lives in the UK where the sun isn't really out and I have darker skin, I take
Yeah.
that anyway. But I don't really think that's much to do with being vegan anyway, because I think even with animal products, you can't get that much vitamin D regardless. You're looking to go to the sun or to a
Yeah.
supplement. Omega 3 is
Mhm.
an interesting one because I think it's worth covering bases. But I believe that so obviously you've got the ALA omega 3, the shorter chain fat. So from chia, flax, hemp seeds, walnuts, and
Hmm.
of course they can get converted to the longer chain DHA EPA. I believe there's something to do with the pathway that the ALA and the DHA EPA, the enzyme is like the same. They compete for the same kind of pathway or something along those lines. And if your omega 6 is, no, sorry, no, your omega 3 and your omega 6 compete for the same pathway. So if your omega 6 is too high, then that'll be more dominant than the omega 3s and you won't get much of that conversion. I take a DHA EPA supplement anyway. And again, I don't think this is unique to people who are vegan because people take fish oil, they take,
Yeah.
omega 3s from their animal base, which is, it is what it is. And I think we're
Mhm.
seeing some clinical benefit of taking higher amounts for heart health, for brain health. So I think it's actually a
Hmm.
good thing to try and optimize anyway. And then the nutrients that you maybe want to think a little bit about. So iron, calcium, selenium, iodine. Obviously,
Mm.
there's some nuances around iron and getting it from the sources, but then also combining it with vitamin C because non-heme iron is slightly less absorbable than heme iron. Calcium,
Hmm.
the foods to get it from, fortified milk, tahini, greens, lentils, things like that. Selenium, Brazil nut, iodine from seaweed. But again, you can just cover bases by popping a multi-nutrient. I do that. I don't think that makes my diet any worse. I just think it's just
Yeah.
a smart thing to do. So
Hmm.
Yeah.
yeah, and then I think you can look to supplement things like magnesium, but I prefer a food first approach to magnesium. So pumpkin seeds are great, legumes, oats, like these are really important. But obviously, we know that magnesium for its benefits for sleep and things like that is really, really useful for people to explore. Obviously, governs hundreds of enzymatic reactions in the body, so it's a great one
Yeah.
to look at. What else is there? I think those are probably the main ones. Creatine, I think, is great as well
Yeah.
from a physical standpoint, but
Mhm.
then also from a brain standpoint as well. We're now seeing
Hmm.
the studies that are coming out about that. I try a few different things. I look at different, but I think those are probably my staples that I look towards. Make sure that a multi-nutrient solid, it's got all the key nutrients that I need, B12, and then cover bases for everything else really.
Okay, perfect. If someone is thinking about going plant-based or just starting out, what are like three pantry staples or like go-to ingredients that make plant-based meals like easy or like accessible? Like what are your three
Oh, that's a good
go-tos?
one, actually. Pantry staples. So,
Or even just like anything in
yeah,
the
yeah.
fridge or
So,
like
I think making sure your protein sources are on point. So, I like tofu and tempeh. I think they're really versatile. You can cook with them in an amazing way, add so much flavor to them. So, I'd definitely say that. I think legumes, canned legumes, and preferably ones that are like BPA free cans or whatever. But if you can't, then just get those. So, they're really easy. Again, if you're
Hmm.
busy, you know, chickpeas, kidney beans, black beans, so much variety there as well. Um, what else would I say? What else do I always have? Uh, Greens. I mean, obviously, I love greens. I think like greens are they're so
Hmm.
important for your health. I eat a lot of broccoli. I eat a lot of spinach, kale, foods like that. Good to have those into the diet. So, but yeah, I like the convenience side that, as I said, the canned legumes bring to people's lives. I think not everyone has the time to, have this full time job of wellness and optimization and can cook every single day. So, making quick meals of like canned legumes is a really good thing as well.
Okay, perfect. We haven't talked about this yet, but I would love to pick your brain on this. The Beyond Meat and like plant-based
Mm,
meat
yeah.
alternatives. Um, People will say that these, like these are worse for your health. You might as well just eat the
Mm,
meat. Some people are saying, well, it's better if you swap these for red
mm.
meat. I would love your thoughts on these. Like, are these things that you incorporate? Do you recommend them? Like, what is the research on these?
Yeah, so I think there was a study that came out that showed that these plant-based alternative meats had a slightly better cardiometabolic profile. Personally, I
Hmm.
don't have them in my house. If I'm at a social event or there's like I'm out at dinner and that's what they've got, then I'll have it. Like it's not a big deal. But my
Hmm.
preference is to lean towards whole foods. That's just kind of what I prefer to do. I do think that a lot of these plant-based alternative meat products they do have high amounts of sodium, they do have high amounts of fat, again, they can be maybe a gateway for some people if people are trying to go more plant-based, which is fine, which is fair enough. But I think, yeah, trying to stay away from the processed foods is probably the thing. And I think as time goes on, a lot more of these companies are producing more of these foods. It's going to be harder and harder for like the average person to kind of discern what foods they should be getting into their diet, because again, another marketing kind of ploy is putting plant-based on things. So
Yeah.
you might see like
Mm.
Beyond Meat or some of these other alternative like weird fake bacons, things like that. They'll put plant-based on the packaging. And
Yeah.
again, I think there's this maybe a belief that, and this could be under one of the myths actually, that because something is plant-based or because something is vegan, it automatically makes it healthy. And people fall into
Yeah.
that trap as well. So
Mhm.
I'm always really a proponent of people going for whole foods. If you want to have these foods every now and again as a treat or on occasion, or you got into a barbecue and you want to take a Beyond Burger, that's cool. Like I've done that in
Yeah.
the past. But in terms of your
Mhm.
day to day, your bread and butter, you want to be leaning more in towards those whole foods. You want to be getting more of those into your diet and leaving those other foods to the fringes.
I think that's kind of the whole thing, like when it comes to nutrition, especially how
Mm,
we talk about it on this podcast. Like,
mm,
I'm gluten free, but
yeah.
I'm never going to say that like choosing the gluten free cake is the healthier option. No, I
Mm,
choose it because it won't hurt my stomach, but it's
yeah.
still cake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And it's the
Exactly.
same thing. If you want to have like the vegan bacon, bacon, whatever they call it,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah.
But if you're instead of having like bacon once a month, you're like, well, I can
Mm,
have the fake bacon every day because it's
mm,
plant based. Like, no, it's still
Mhm.
not a
exactly.
healthy source of food to have in your diet daily, right? So I think
Exactly.
that's kind of the general principle of healthy
Yeah.
eating.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, what are some red flags for people listening that indicate that a diet trend may be based on misinformation? I know we had said earlier, like
Yeah.
something with a lot of shock
Yeah.
value.
Yeah.
What are you seeing there?
You know what the biggest one is? That's actually a really good question. The biggest red flag is when someone speaks about their diet in absolutes, as if this is the best thing
Mm.
for you to do. Everything else is bad.
Hmm.
Because as you two will know, like you've been to school, you've studied, and you've got so much knowledge. You can't be sure. Like you can't say this is exactly what people need to do. You can have some idea with certain things, for
Hmm.
example, high saturated fat, the benefits of fiber, reducing your processed foods. But if you come onto social media and you say that this diet is the best diet, and you're absolute in that standpoint and that stance, that's a big red flag to me.
Yeah.
Because how can you speak for everyone? You know what I mean? How can you say that that's the best diet for everyone?
Mhm.
You don't know people's circumstances, you don't know people's dietary habits, you don't know their allergies, you don't know how certain foods might react to them. Again, you can
Yeah.
have certain themes like getting good amounts of fiber in your diet is great for everyone, regardless of diet.
Hmm.
Getting low processed food is great for everyone, regardless of diet. So, yeah, again, it comes back to what you said to your patient, where if you see that shock value, or you see something that's crazy, if you see someone saying something with such like an assuredness and a sense of this is it, yeah,
Yeah.
you should be you got it's worth consideration in terms of what they're probably wrong.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
like that. Great answer. What is something you wish more people understood about plant-based nutrition that we don't see talked about enough?
Um, do you know what? I think we're kind of seeing a lot of it now. Seeing a lot of it talked about. I think, as I said, the protein one was like
Yeah.
people would automatically think that you can't get protein on a plant-based diet. But I think one thing that's actually been really important for me is obviously when people think of protein, they think of building muscle, right? They want to see someone with muscle. So I train a lot. I've built muscle, a lot of muscle actually since I've been plant-based. So I always think that that's a really good kind of marker to show people, like, look, I'm talking about it, but I'm also doing it as well. So I
Hmm.
think that would have been the one that would have been maybe the thing that people aren't talking enough about. But I actually do think it's kind of being spoken a lot about now. Like you can build muscle on a plant-based diet. Yes, you have people in the carnivore camp talking about bioavailability, blah, blah, blah. But I
Yeah.
almost think in some ways it's slowly getting drowned out by the people who are showing that you can build muscle by being fit, being strong, looking healthy,
Hmm.
and kind of like being a kind of healthy advocate or healthy champion of their cause. So yeah, I'd probably say that. I don't think there's anything at the moment that jumps to mind anyway. Maybe you might be able to help me out on that one. Is there anything? No, I don't think there is.
Oh, I think that's a good
Yeah.
No.
one. Yeah. I'm
Hmm.
sure there will be things in the
No,
future. We'll
exactly.
have
Yeah,
to
there's
circle
always going to be something that comes up.
back.
Yeah.
Exactly. What would you say to someone who's curious about adding more plants to their plate but feels really overwhelmed? Where can they start?
Start with one meal. I always say start with one meal. And I think the easiest meal to start with is breakfast because it just sets the
Mhm.
tone for the day. It's the first thing you're thinking about in the morning. you're maybe not going to be so flustered later in the day as you might be with work and kids and other commitments. Breakfast is an easy one because I like to just go with either a smoothie or with oatmeal. And with both of those, you can load up a number of different plants. So, for example, with my oatmeal, what I'll typically do is make the oats. I'll add chia and flax into it. Add some banana, add some cinnamon. Then I'll add some berries, so blueberries, raspberries, maybe different types of nuts and seeds, pumpkin seeds, hemp seeds, walnuts. So that's like 10 or 11 different plants right there and then, just in one meal without really thinking. And you can customize that. So one day you might be able to have blueberries and raspberries, and the next day you might choose to have, I don't know, cranberries and strawberries, and then choose to have a different nut, maybe some selenium, or maybe some Brazil nuts for selenium, or maybe some other different seeds. So you can change and chop it around, and you can just make it just kind of customize it to your own. So, and then with a smoothie, you can do the same thing. So yeah, I think one meal a day, just try and start with one meal, see how you go. Maybe get like a breakfast recipe under your belt, oats or smoothie, and then maybe get like an easy dinner recipe that you can then kind of tweak and customize to make throughout the day. And yeah, if you do that, I think you'll be in a good place. And because I think there's always a temptation for people when they're trying to get healthier or trying to better their diet that they have to do everything all at once. Just
Yeah.
start slow and just see where you're at in
Yeah.
6 months. I think we want things to be done really quickly.
Yeah.
I believe there's a saying that says we underestimate what we can achieve. We overestimate what we can achieve in a year and underestimate what we can achieve in 10 years. And that's a
Yeah.
really good way of
Yeah.
looking at how you
So
can,
true.
you can improve your nutrition. People want to have things done within like a week, 2 weeks, a month, but then they don't actually think about the long game, thinking about where you're going to be in 6 months, 9 months,
Yeah.
12 months. And that's way more important.
Yeah, definitely.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Okay, so at the end of our episodes, we do something called rapid fire,
Mm,
where we're going to give you a statement that we've seen online. It could be true, it could be
mm,
false, it could be a it depends sort of
yeah.
situation.
Hmm.
So I'm going to read one out, and you're
Hmm.
going to tell us myth,
Yeah.
truth, or it depends.
Okay, cool.
Okay, some of them we have covered
Yeah.
during the episode, but just
Right.
so we can really confirm.
Yeah.
Okay,
Let's do it.
the first one is that soy causes issues with fertility.
Myth.
You can get enough protein on a plant-based diet.
Truth.
You need animal products to build muscle.
Myth.
Humans are biologically meant to eat meat. It's in our DNA.
Didn't cover that.
Somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
Okay.
Fiber can cause GI upset in high amounts.
Truth.
Yeah. A cup of berries is pretty much equivalent to a fiber supplement.
I'm going to say that's a myth.
Okay.
Okay.
Really good source of fiber, though.
Really a source of
Maybe-
fiber,
maybe
but
not.
not necessarily
Yeah.
a fiber supplement. I think there's some
Yeah.
differences there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Mhm. Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on today. This was a
Thanks for
blast. We covered a lot of ground. We covered a lot of myths, and I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate your takes on things and all of the plant-based information that you gave as well. I'm really inspired to make a good lunch
Yes,
now,
definitely.
so I'll have to do that after.
Yeah. Well,
Can you let our listeners know where they can find you, where they can, find you on Instagram, your website, anything else like that, where they can connect with you?
yeah. So my Instagram is just Jeffrey Boadi. So first name and surname. My Twitter, I use Twitter as well. Same username with an underscore. My website is jeffreyboadi.com. So I kind of put up more longer form pieces around nutrition, health and well-being. I have a free weekly newsletter that you can sign up to there as well, called the Wellness Weekly Newsletter. Every Monday, I just drop some information around health and well-being to just help people live better lives. So you can sign up to that, and it's totally free. So yeah, that's kind of where you're going to find me. I have a really big project coming out next year, which I can't talk too much about now, but yeah, it should be exciting.
Oh, very exciting.
Amazing. Exciting. Yes, everyone should follow your Instagram for some nutrition and recipe
Yes.
inspo. I'm
Inspo.
definitely gonna go through and save some of them.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for coming
Amazing.
on.
Thanks for having me. Yeah. Cheers.